This time I did an oil and filter change on Royal Enfield's Himalayan. In the first part of this video we service the valves, but this time we're going to press on, change the oil and the filters. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. The first thing we need to do is to get the oil nice and warm. The best way to do this is to go out for a ride of around 5 miles or so. If you can't do that, then it's just a matter of running the bike for 2 to 5 minutes, just to make sure it gets really warm. Once you've done that, unscrew the filler cap, because this will let the oil come out a bit better. And it's about now you're going to need some Bako foil, aluminum foil or aluminium foil, whatever you want to call it. The fact is, you're going to need something to put on the sides of the engine, particularly over the exhaust, because for some bizarre reason Royal Enfield put the drain plugs on the side of the engine rather than the bottom. Go figure. That done, you're going to get yourself a 90mm socket to unscrew the main bolt. Remembering, of course, to put a bowl underneath to catch all the oil that's going to come pissing out as soon as you undo the screw. Don't forget there's a brass washer underneath the nut here. Now I did forget about that and noticed it afterwards. Don't worry, I did put the thing back on when I'd finished. Eventually. The drain plug attaches to a small cover which is attached by 2 small 8mm bolts. You need to undo these and remove the cover because the oil strainer is hidden just underneath. Now carefully remove the strainer and make a note of exactly how it looked when it came out. You'll need to install it in the same orientation to make sure you get the thing right. There we go. And now we'll just leave it for a while to let the remaining oil dribble out. And take the strainer indoors and wash it under a hot tap. We're just removing any debris. We need to make sure that it's dry when we're finished, of course. I'm using my bike dryer to make sure I get rid of all the water. You could use a hairdryer, or you could just leave it for a little while and just wait for the whole thing to dry naturally. As long as it's dry before it goes back in, it really doesn't matter how you get there. But don't use too much heat, obviously. Over to the right side of the bike now, where you'll find the oil filter. Again, we're going to need some more aluminum foil or aluminium foil because the engine's hot and the exhaust's hot. And it'll stop it making a mess over that nice hot exhaust. The filter itself is retained by 3 8mm bolts. Now I try to leave these in position when you remove the cover because the one in the bottom in particular is much longer than the other two. So you don't get them mixed up, it's best to leave them actually in position. Again, you're going to need the bowl underneath, because even though you've drained most of the oil out the other side, there'll still be some retained in the filter, and that's going to pour out. The official Royal Enfield filter comes with a new gasket. Now just in case the one you bought doesn't, take great care when removing this cover, because you may have to reuse the gasket. Although of course, it's definitely best practice to put a new one on each time. The filter itself should just wiggle out now, if you can get your fingers around it. There we go, and as you can see, it's quite stained. Next we're going to pour some oil into a jug. We're going to use this to prime the filter. So we're going to get our nice official Royal Enfield filter out of the packet and then plop it into the jug to prime it with oil. Just before installation, I like to pour a little bit of oil on the inside of the filter. Now this can mean that you get a little bit of a mess when you insert it because you're going to a little bit leak out, but I think in the long run it's helping to prime that filter a little bit better, and it means there's going to be a little bit less oil that's going to have to come from the sump to fill that filter up. This is particularly good practice if you've got a bike with those kind of car filters, the metallic ones. Next, reinstall the cover with its 8mm bolts. Now the cover is spring loaded to help hold the filter in position. Remember, we're putting it back on the same orientation that we took it off, simply because the bottom one has a much larger pin. Again, it's 8mm nuts that hold the thing in place. Now we're going to install our nice clean and dry strainer back into the engine in the same orientation that it came out in. Now we're going to reattach that cover with its 8mm bolts, and again with the filter there should be a spare gasket that arrives with this cover. It's a small rubber gasket that just fits in a groove around it. You may or you may not choose to replace this. Obviously it's best practice to do so. Now we need to insert the drain plug with of course that brass washer in situ. And now of course it's reinserting the fresh oil. Now I'm not going to recommend a particular grade of oil here, you just need to stick to the guide for your particular country, because it will vary of course with the climate in which you live. Now like a lot of modern bikes, the Enfield actually has a spyglass on the side of the sump to tell you the oil level, rather than using a dipstick. So you need to have the bike on level ground on the centre stand to do this. Now we need to fill it to the high mark before we run the engine. Running the engine will of course prime the filters. Once we've done this, we're going to need to leave the bike standing for a while to let that oil level recover. So while we're waiting for that oil to drain back in, we'll take the side cover off the left. That's where the air filter is. It's retained by Allen bolts, although beware, the one on the bottom left is actually a fake bolt and it's just attached to a nut on the other side, doesn't do anything. There's a plastic plug in that corner that actually holds the panel in place. The air filter cover is retained by 3 Phillips screwdrivers. We just need to undo those to pull the cover off. There's also a retaining dowel which you can see just at the top there on the left. Now we just need to pull the filter out and inspect it. And it's actually pretty pristine, it's only done about 300 miles. It's a good idea to look inside the airbox too, just to make sure there's no oil or debris or anything like that. This one seems fine, so I'm just going to put it back in and reinstall the covers. Now we've given the oil time to drain back, we can see it's still a little bit low. So we're going to add a little bit of extra oil to bring it back up to a level just underneath that maximum fill line. Perfect, ready for the road. Well, hope you enjoyed that video, and of course you found it useful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, thank you very much for watching.